I'm Irene Brooks, 35 years old, and I never imagined my own parents would betray me in front of everyone at my mom's birthday party. It was supposed to be a joyful night in our Boise, Idaho suburban home, filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the hum of family and neighbors. I'd spent hours baking a 3-tier vanilla cake, my hands steady from years of running my own bakery to honor my mom's special day. But then, as I set the cake on the table, my dad's voice cut through the chatter sharp and cold. "Irene, you're a burden," he said, his eyes fixed on me. "We want to live without you." My mom nodded, her face unyielding. My sister just smiled and sipped her wine, not saying a word. The room went quiet, every guest staring. My chest tightened, but I didn't flinch. I forced a calm smile, set down my glass, and walked out into the chilly Idaho night. I didn't look back. Just one sentence at that family party sparked a chain of events that changed my life and my family forever. If it were you, would you walk away in silence or confront them right there? Leave a comment, I want to hear your thoughts. That night in the hotel, I lay awake staring at the dim ceiling, my mind racing back to where it all started. I'd built Sweet Haven Bakery from nothing, a cozy spot in downtown Boise, where locals lined up for my lemon tarts and chocolate eclairs. By 30, I was my own boss, juggling orders, payroll, and a small crew. The bakery wasn't just a job, it was my pride, proof I could stand tall. Customers would rave about my cinnamon rolls, and I'd smile knowing I'd earned every bit of that praise. But 3 years ago, everything shifted. Mom's heart surgery hit us hard, piling up $60,000 in medical bills. The bank was circling, threatening to foreclose on the house with a $100,000 mortgage hanging over Dad's head. They called me late at night, voices trembling, begging for help. I didn't think twice. I sold Sweet Haven for $90,000, every cent going to their hospital bills and mortgage payments. I packed up my apartment and moved back home to save money, taking a job at a chain bakery across town. The pay was meager, $15 an hour, a steep fall from owning my own place. But it let me stay close, let me keep their world afloat. Every month, I wired $2,000 to cover their electricity, water, and mortgage. I'd come home from long shifts, feet aching, and still cook dinner, mop floors, even fix the leaky kitchen faucet. I thought that's what family did, show up, no questions asked. But Pamela, my sister 3 years older, didn't see it that way. She'd always been the favorite, the one Mom and Dad praised for her charm. When I moved back, her warmth vanished. She'd glare when I walked through the door, muttering about me taking up space in their house. One night, I overheard her on the phone, her voice sharp enough to cut. "Irene's just mooching off Mom and Dad," she said, knowing I was in the hallway. My fists clenched, but I stayed silent, telling myself she was just lashing out. Her online boutique was floundering, and she was always short on cash, always asking me for loans. She never paid back $500 one month, $1,000 the next. Pamela's jabs grew bolder. At dinner one evening, I shared a new scone recipe I was testing at work, hoping to spark a real conversation. She cut me off with a smirk. "Why bother? You're not running your bakery anymore. You're just a cashier." Mom and Dad kept eating, their silence louder than her words. My cheeks burned, but I focused on my plate, swallowing the sting. Another time, I dragged myself home after a double shift, exhausted, only to find Pamela lounging on the couch, scrolling her phone. "You're always in the way," she snapped, eyes fixed on her screen. "This isn't your personal hotel." I bit my lip, reminding myself I was there to help, to keep the family together. But each jab felt like a weight piling on the sacrifices I'd made. I thought back to better days when Pamela and I were tight. We'd bike through Boise's greenbelt as kids, licking ice cream cones, dreaming big. She wanted to design clothes. I wanted to bake for the world. But her boutique never took off, and my bakery became the family's lifeline. I never bragged. Never would. But Pamela's resentment grew anyway. She'd borrow money, promising repayment when her business exploded. It never did. Still, I kept wiring those monthly payments, kept showing up, believing family mattered. I thought they saw my effort, my love. I was wrong. Mom and Dad never stepped in when Pamela tore me down. They'd sit there letting her words hang in the air, their indifference cutting deeper than her insults. I'd given up my business, my independence for a family that didn't care. Lying in that hotel bed, my phone silent, no texts, no calls, I saw it clearly. I'd poured my money, my time, my heart into their lives and got nothing but scorn. But that was about to end. The next morning, I sat at the hotel desk, my laptop open, fingers trembling as I logged into my bank account. I'd been wiring $2,000 every month to cover Mom and Dad's electricity, water, and mortgage, my routine for 3 years. Not anymore. With a few clicks, I canceled the automatic payments. No more utility bills, no more mortgage transfers. I felt a knot in my stomach, but also a strange relief, like I'd finally set down a weight I'd carried too long. I packed my bag, checked out, and drove to Beverly Foster, my best friend since our college days in Boise. Her small apartment in the North End was a haven with mismatched furniture and a warm coffee pot always brewing. I dropped my duffel by the couch, my hands still shaking, and told her everything: Mom and Dad's words at the party, Pamela's cold smile, how I walked out into the night. Beverly listened, her eyes wide, stirring sugar into her coffee. "They called you a burden?" she said, her voice sharp with disbelief. "After everything you've done," I nodded, my throat tight, and recounted how I'd sold Sweet Haven Bakery to save them, how I'd kept their house running while Pamela mocked me. Beverly leaned forward, her face serious. "You're not alone in this, Irene. My friend Carla went through something similar. Her brother used her savings to fund his startup, promised to pay her back, but when it tanked, he blamed her for not giving more. She cut him off. And you know what? She's thriving now, owns a coffee shop downtown." Beverly's words hit me hard. Carla's story wasn't mine, but it felt close, like a mirror showing me I wasn't wrong to draw a line. Later that day, I went to work at the chain bakery, my apron still smelling of flour from yesterday's shift. Roger Coleman, my coworker, noticed my quiet mood. He's 36, always quick with a joke to lighten the long hours behind the counter. "You okay, Irene?" he asked, stacking trays of muffins. I hesitated, then spilled it all: the party, Mom and Dad's betrayal, Pamela's silence. Roger didn't interrupt, just nodded, his hand steady as he worked. When I finished, he looked me in the eye. "You've been carrying them for years," he said. "You sold your dream to keep their lights on. They don't get to treat you like that and expect you to keep paying. Stay strong, you're doing the right thing." His words were simple, but they grounded me like a lifeline, pulling me back from doubt. Beverly and Roger didn't just listen, they gave me clarity. I'd spent years thinking family meant sacrifice, no matter the cost. But their stories, Carla's, Roger's quiet conviction, showed me I wasn't selfish for stopping. I was protecting myself. That evening, back at Beverly's, I checked my phone. No calls, no texts from Mom, Dad, or Pamela. I wasn't surprised, but it still stung. They didn't know yet that their electricity was off, their water shut down, their mortgage payment skipped. I pictured the house dark and quiet, the fridge silent, the faucets dry. Part of me wanted to call, to fix it, to be the good daughter again. But I remembered Dad's voice, cold and final, calling me a burden. I remembered Pamela's smirk, her wine glass glinting in the party light. I set my phone down, my resolve hardening. Beverly poured me another coffee, her voice firm. "You're not their ATM, Irene. Let them figure it out." I nodded, staring at the steam rising from my mug. Roger's words echoed in my head, "Stay strong." I'd given them everything, and they'd thrown it back in my face. Now they'd face the consequences. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going back. A week later, my phone buzzed, Dad's name flashing on the screen. I hesitated, my thumb hovering, then answered. His voice was gruff-edged with irritation. "Irene, what's going on?" "The lights are out. The water's off. You need to turn it all back on now." I gripped the phone, my pulse quickening. He didn't ask how I was, didn't mention the party, didn't apologize. "You're overreacting," he snapped, cutting me off when I tried to speak. You can't just pull the plug like this. Fix it. I took a deep breath, my voice steady despite the anger rising in my chest. Dad, I'm done paying for you. You called me a burden. Figure it out yourselves. There was a long pause, then a huff. You're being ridiculous, he said, and hung up. I stared at the blank screen, my hands trembling, but I felt no urge to call back. Hours later, a text from Pamela popped up. Wow, Irene real nice. Cutting us off. You're so selfish. Her words stung each one like a needle, but they didn't surprise me. My sister had always twisted things to make me the villain. I could picture her typing it, sitting in the dark house, her phone the only light. She didn't ask for help, didn't acknowledge what I'd done for years, just threw insults as always. I typed a reply, short and final. You need to take care of yourselves now. I'm not your bank. I hit send and turned off notifications, my resolve firm. I'd spent years bailing them out, but no more. They'd have to face reality without me. I leaned back on Beverly's couch, the weight of their words lingering. Dad's demand, Pamela's jab, they acted like I owed them, like my sacrifices were nothing. I thought about the $2,000 I'd sent every month, the mortgage payments keeping their house safe, the utility bills I'd covered while Pamela mocked me for taking up space. They'd taken it all for granted, and now they were scrambling. Part of me wondered if they'd even try to fix it themselves, or if they'd just keep blaming me. I pushed the thought away. Their mess wasn't my problem anymore. Across town, the neighbors were starting to notice. Norman and Alice Clark. Our neighbors, 2 houses down, had always been the type to watch everyone's business. Beverly told me she'd seen them lingering on their porch, glancing at Mom and Dad's house. The lights hadn't come on for days, the windows dark, the driveway empty. I heard Alice talking at the grocery store, Beverly said over breakfast, her voice low. She said the Brooks place looks abandoned, no power, no water. People are starting to talk. I nodded, unsurprised. In Boise's tight-knit suburbs, a dark house was news. Norman, always nosy, had probably peeked over the fence, noting the unmowed lawn, the trash bins left out. Alice, with her knack for gossip, would spread it further. I didn't care. Let them talk. Mom and Dad had made their bed when they called me a burden in front of everyone. Still, the thought of the neighborhood whispering tugged at me. I'd grown up on that street, played tag in those yards, knew every family by name. Now the Clarks' watchful eyes marked the beginning of something bigger, a crack in the perfect image Mom and Dad had always clung to. They'd cared so much about appearances, hosting barbecues, joining the homeowners association, but appearances couldn't pay bills. I wondered what they were doing now, lighting candles, borrowing water from neighbors, arguing over whose fault it was. Pamela was probably fuming, her boutique plans stalled without internet. I felt a pang of guilt, but it faded fast. They'd chosen to treat me like dirt. This was on them. Sitting in Beverly's apartment, I sipped my coffee, staring out the window. The north end was quiet, the streets lined with trees, a world away from the chaos I'd left. I'd made my choice, and I wasn't turning back. They could call me selfish, ridiculous, whatever they wanted. I wasn't their lifeline anymore. 2 weeks after I cut off my support, the doorbell rang. Beverly opened it, and there was Mom, her face, gaunt eyes red. She stepped inside, clutching her purse, and looked at me as if I were a stranger. Irene, we need to talk, she said, her voice low, almost pleading. I wiped flour off my hands, my heart pounding, but I stayed calm. What is it, Mom? I asked, leaning against the counter. She hesitated, then let it spill. The house is falling apart. No electricity, no water. We're borrowing from neighbors just to shower. You have to turn it back on. Her words were desperate, but there was no apology, no hint of regret for what she'd said at her birthday party. I crossed my arms, keeping my voice steady. You called me a burden, Mom, in front of everyone. You and Dad said you wanted to live without me. Her eyes flickered, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she shifted tactics. We're struggling, Irene. Pamela's working at a convenience store, now ringing up snacks for minimum wage. Her online boutique's dead without internet. We're barely getting by. I felt a twinge of pity for Pamela, picturing my sister behind a counter scanning chips and soda, her dreams of designer fame stalled. But the pity faded fast. She'd mocked me for years, called me selfish just last week. They'd taken my sacrifices for granted, and now they were paying the price. Mom stepped closer, her voice softer, almost manipulative. Your family, Irene. We need you. Just pay the bills until we figure this out. I shook my head, the memory of her party still sharp, her nod when Dad called me a burden, her silence as Pamela smirked. No, I said firmly. You wanted to live without me. Now you do. Sort it out yourselves. Mom's face hardened, her lips tightening. You're abandoning us, she said, her tone accusing, like I was the one who'd betrayed them. I didn't flinch. You abandoned me first, I replied, my voice cold. She stood there speechless, then turned and left, the door clicking shut behind her. Beverly, who'd been listening quietly, poured us both coffee. You did the right thing, she said, sliding a mug toward me. They can't guilt you into fixing their mess. I nodded, but Mom's visit left a knot in my stomach. I'd spent years keeping their house afloat, $2,000 a month for utilities and mortgage money I'd scraped together from my low-paying bakery job. Now they were scrambling, and part of me wondered if I was too harsh. But then I remembered Pamela's text, her selfish jab, and Dad's demand to fix it without an ounce of gratitude. They'd made their choice at that party, and I'd made mine. I thought about Pamela stuck at a convenience store, her laptop useless without Wi-Fi. She'd always been so proud, boasting about her boutique, borrowing my money to fund it, never paying me back. Now reality was hitting her hard. No internet meant no online sales, no social media posts, no chance to play entrepreneur. I could have felt sorry for her, but her words calling me a leech, a cashier, a burden kept me grounded. She'd built her own cage just like Mom and Dad had. They'd relied on me for years, never once saying thank you, never once seeing me as more than a paycheck. I'd given them everything, my business, my savings, my time, and they'd thrown it back in my face. Mom's pleading hadn't changed that. They'd have to find their own way now, no matter how hard it was. I wasn't their safety net anymore. A month after Mom's visit, I was scrolling through my phone at Beverly's apartment when a notification pinged from the Boise Community Hub, a local Facebook group. My stomach dropped as I read Pamela's post. Irene Brooks abandoned our family, left us without power or water. Some daughter. Her words cut deep, twisting the truth to paint me as the villain. Comments flooded in, neighbors I'd known for years, some who'd loved my cupcakes at block parties, now expressing shock and sympathy for poor Pamela. I clenched my phone, fighting the urge to reply. I'd given them my bakery, my savings, years of support, and now my sister was smearing my name online for everyone to see. The gossip didn't stay on the internet. At the bakery during a slow afternoon shift, I overheard Roger and Emma, a new cashier, talking by the coffee machine. Their voices carried over the hum of the oven. The Brooks house is completely dark, Emma said, wiping down the counter. No power, no water, and they're behind on the mortgage. I heard they might lose it. Pamela's stuck working at the gas station on Fairview, ringing up candy bars. Roger shook his head, his tone sharp. Irene just walked out on them. Left them high and dry. I froze behind the bread racks, my heart sinking. The whole town was talking now, not just the neighbors. People I worked with every day were buying Pamela's story, believing I was heartless. I tried to focus on kneading dough, but the whispers hurt. Customers who'd once praised my scones now gave me side glances, their chatter quieting when I approached. I wanted to tell them the truth, that I'd sold my business to save Mom and Dad, that I'd paid their bills for years while Pamela mocked me. But I kept my head down, knowing a public defense would only make things worse. Beverly noticed my mood when I got back to her place. Let them talk, she said, handing me a mug of tea. Pamela's desperate, trying to save face because she's stuck scanning gum for minimum wage. I nodded, but the sting of their judgment lingered. Then one evening, Pamela showed up at Beverly's door, banging loud enough to rattle the frame. Beverly opened it, her expression wary, and let her in. Pamela's eyes locked on me, blazing with anger. "You're destroying us." She snapped, her voice sharp. "Your stunt killed my boutique. No internet, no sales. I'm slaving at a gas station because of you." Her words were venomous, each one aimed to wound. I stood up, my hands steady despite my racing pulse. "You called me selfish, Pamela?" I said, my voice calm but unyielding. "You smirked at Mom's party when they called me a burden. I paid for your life $2,000 a month for years. You never said thank you." Pamela's jaw tightened, but she didn't back down. "You owe us," she said, her voice trembling with fury. "We're family, Irene." I stepped closer, not letting her twist the narrative. "Family doesn't lie about each other online. You posted that garbage to make me the bad guy, but you're the one who failed. I'm done being your scapegoat." Beverly moved toward the door, her stance firm. "You need to leave," she said, her tone final. Pamela shot me a glare, then stormed out, her footsteps echoing down the hall. I sank onto the couch, my chest tight. Beverly sat beside me, her voice soft but steady. "You held your ground," she said. "That's what counts." I nodded, but the weight of Pamela's lies and the town's whispers pressed hard. My community, people I'd grown up with, worked with, was turning against me. But I wasn't going to crumble. They could believe what they wanted. 3 months later, I drove past our old street in Boise, my hands tight on the wheel. The Brooks house, Mom and Dad's pride for decades, was gone from our family. A foreclosure sign stood in the yard, the windows boarded up, the lawn overgrown. Beverly had heard from a neighbor that they'd sold it at a loss, unable to keep up with the mortgage after I stopped payments. Now Mom, Dad, and Pamela were renting a cramped apartment on the outskirts of Boise, a rundown complex with peeling paint and cracked sidewalks. I didn't feel triumph, just a hollow ache. They'd built that life leaning on me until I broke, and now they were starting over with nothing. I pushed the thought aside and focused on my own path. For weeks, I'd been planning a new bakery, something small, but mine. Roger had been a lifeline, offering to co-sign a loan and help with the paperwork. "You've got the skills, Irene," he'd said one night, handing me a stack of business forms at the chain bakery. "You built Sweet Haven once. You can do it again." His confidence steadied me. We found a storefront in Boise's North End, a cozy space with big windows and room for a counter. I spent my evenings sketching layouts, pricing ovens, testing recipes for scones and tarts. The work was exhausting, but thrilling. It felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd lost when I sold my first shop to save Mom and Dad. One morning, as I was measuring the storefront's windows for curtains, an email from Pamela popped up on my phone. The subject line was simple: "I'm sorry." I hesitated, my finger hovering over the screen, then opened it. "Irene," she wrote, "I was wrong. I shouldn't have posted that stuff online or said those things. We're struggling," and I lashed out. "I hope you can forgive me." Her words were careful, measured, but they rang hollow. My sister had called me selfish, smeared my name, stood silent while Mom and Dad tore me down at the party. This apology, months too late, felt like a last-ditch effort to ease her guilt, not mend what she'd broken. I closed the email without replying, my focus back on the tape measure in my hand. Beverly stopped by the storefront later, her eyes lighting up at the progress. "This place is going to be amazing," she said, running her hand along the empty counter. I smiled, grateful for her support. The whispers around town, Pamela's post, the gossip at the bakery had quieted, replaced by curiosity about my new venture. Customers who'd once given me cold looks now asked about opening day, drawn by the smell of test batches I'd brought to work. I wasn't naive. Boise was small, and some would always see me as the daughter who abandoned her family. But I didn't care anymore. I'd spent years carrying their weight, and now I was building something for myself. I thought about Mom and Dad in their new apartment, probably blaming me for their fall. Pamela, too, likely resented me, even with her apology. I pictured her in that gas station scanning items, her dreams of a boutique fading. Part of me felt a pang. Family wasn't supposed to end like this. But they'd chosen their path when they called me a burden, when they took my sacrifices and gave nothing back. I'd given them everything, my business, my money, my heart, and they'd thrown it away. Now they were living the consequences just as I was living mine. Standing in my empty bakery, I taped a sign to the door, Irene's Bake Shop opening soon. Roger was right. I could do this again. The smell of flour, the hum of an oven, the chance to create something new. It was all I needed. Pamela's email, their struggles, their new life in that rundown complex, they weren't my problem anymore. I was done looking back. 6 months later, I stood behind the counter of Irene's Bake Shop, the smell of fresh cinnamon rolls filling the air. The grand opening had been a whirlwind. Locals lined up outside, their chatter warm, their smiles genuine. My little storefront in Boise's North End was alive with sunlight streaming through the windows and trays of pastries flying off the shelves. For the first time in years, I felt whole, like I'd found my place again. I'd spent so long carrying my family's weight, pouring my heart into their lives, only to be called a burden. But here, surrounded by flour dust and happy customers, I knew my worth. It wasn't tied to their approval or their needs. It was mine, hard-earned and undeniable. I'd heard bits and pieces about Mom, Dad, and Pamela through the grapevine. They were still in that rundown apartment on Boise's outskirts, scraping by. Dad had taken up odd jobs, mowing lawns, fixing fences, whatever paid cash. He'd always prided himself on being the provider, the one with the big house and the perfect family image. Now he was hauling tools in a beat-up truck, his pride buried under necessity. Mom had stopped showing up at her social club, the one she'd bragged about for years. No more luncheons or charity events, just quiet days in a cramped living room cut off from the life she'd clung to. Pamela was still at the gas station working late shifts, her boutique dreams long gone. She'd tried to restart her online shop, but without money or internet, it was hopeless. Their world had shrunk, a direct result of taking me for granted, and I felt no guilt for it. Looking back, I saw the truth clearly. Their ingratitude had consequences not just for them, but for me. I'd lost years, my first bakery, my savings, all to keep them afloat. But their words at Mom's party, Pamela's lies online, their demands without a single thank you, they'd pushed me to my limit. I learned that relationships, even family, need to stand on mutual respect. You can't pour everything into people who only take, who see your sacrifices as their right. Standing up for myself, cutting them off, was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was also the most freeing. It taught me that self-reliance isn't just about paying your own bills, it's about owning your value, no matter who tries to tear it down. I thought about the people who'd come through my shop that week. Roger, who'd co-signed my loan, stopped by with a grin, grabbing a scone. Beverly, my rock, helped decorate the place, hanging fairy lights that made it feel like home. Even some old neighbors who'd once whispered about me now came in for coffee, their judgment softened by time. The gossip had faded, replaced by respect for what I'd built. I didn't need everyone to understand my choice to walk away from Mom, Dad, and Pamela. I knew why I'd done it, and that was enough. If you're out there carrying someone else's load, feeling unappreciated, hear me. You are not their servant. Your worth isn't measured by what you do for others, it's in who you are when you stand alone. I spent years trying to prove I was enough, bending over backward for people who never saw me. When I stopped, when I chose myself, I found peace. My family's fall wasn't my fault, it was the result of their choices, their refusal to value me. Now they're living with that, and I'm living for me. So take a hard look at your life. If someone's taking you for granted, it's okay to step back. It's okay to say no. Live for yourself, not for someone else's approval. You'll find your strength just like I did, and it'll carry you further than you ever imagined.